Welcome to Being at Home with George. I'm excited to be here, and I'd like to start off by creating the possibility of both being able to embrace whatever comes up, saying yes to it, and at the same time generating the hope. I've been reflecting on this idea of personal responsibility, taking responsibility for myself or for oneself, and it just so happens that I'm teaching a 6-week study group on the Mindful Athlete course online. And the theme is taking responsibility. So I've been reflecting and thinking about it, and it brought me back to reflecting on some of the quotes from Erich Fromm from his book, Man for Himself. And one of the quotes I'd like to share with you is man must accept the responsibility for himself and the fact that only by using his own powers can he give meaning to life. So that's what I've been doing. That's what's propelled me into my recovery and to this process of self-discovery, this process of releasing the divine spark within what I call the masterpiece that's within each and every one of us, that we all have that divine spark, that Buddha nature, that Christ consciousness, and that it's how we start to access it is by taking responsibility and then using our own powers, going inside and allowing our powers, our potential, that masterpiece to express itself. And so obviously I overcame that initially with my substance abuse. And then chronic pain was the thing that I was dealing with. And of course, 38 years later, there's always something coming up, some roadblock that I have to transform into a stepping stone. And I do that by accepting responsibility and seeking to understand, and to understand that how I respond to it, instead of reacting, responding to it in that space, choosing a response that's in alignment with love, with compassion, with growth, with this idea that I have a masterpiece and there's no problem in front of me greater than the power behind me. And so this idea of accessing that masterpiece. And the challenge I had with that, to be honest with you, is what Soren Kierkegaard talked about back in 1846. He called it the alarming possibility of being able. That one side of the coin is freedom or potential or power, and the other side of the coin is uncertainty or anxiety. And that's what trips us up. That's what I had to deal with. And what I realized was, from my own experience, reading another quote by Erich Fromm, where he says, "But meaning does not imply certainty. Indeed, the quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning." So uncertainty is the very condition to impel man to unfold his powers. That is my experience, is that the anxiety or the uncertainty becomes a teacher, and it compels me because my, what I call the AOF, ass on fire, we're able to go through and to find meaning in the suffering. The suffering is just a roadblock, and we turn it into a stepping stone. And so that's been my experience. So this idea of taking responsibility and realizing that there is no meaning to life except the meaning man gives his life by the unfolding of his powers, by living productively. And for me, that would not occur unless I was able to take personal responsibility and say, okay, I'm embracing whatever comes up, and then I'm generating the hope and asking questions like, what's the lesson here? How can I show up? How can I relate to it in a way that empowers me, that allows me to unfold my powers? And this could be a very simple thing or a very complex thing, but it's the assumption of personal responsibility and creating space between stimulus and response. So in that space, I have the freedom and power to choose. And so when we find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. And I'll end with this last quote. He talks about this idea of only if he recognizes the human situation, the dichotomies inherent in his existence, for instance, life and death, self and other. We can continue that, but life and death is a good one. Inherent in his capacity to unfold his powers, will be able to succeed in his task, or to succeed in my task. And what is that task? To be himself and for himself, to achieve happiness by the full realization of those faculties which are his reason, love, and productive work. Once again, productive work, the unfolding of the powers in the face of uncertainty, in the face of what I call ass on fire, or AOF. And so that is what's possible for us. And this has been my experience, to accept responsibility, to embrace whatever comes up, say yes, and then go and allow my powers to unfold in that uncertainty and that anxiety. And therefore, I am giving meaning to life by how I unfold my powers and by saying yes to life and making or transforming a roadblock into a stepping stone.